Hi there, lovelies. I'm Rhonda Crimes. I'm a life and leadership coach supporting everyday people just like you to reflect and rework your everyday stories so you can step into the everyday leadership of your families and communities and create compelling, meaningful and fruitful lives every day. This guidepost vlog edition from Brené Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection, will be particularly useful if you're feeling like there just isn't enough time, money, energy, or maybe something else feels unavailable for you. I'm really excited to be sharing it with you as I continue to break up the book into bite-sized pieces with shorter videos that let you watch or listen to them on the fly instead of having to find too much extra time. Now, I know that by now this question is purely rhetorical, but do you have this book? If not, the actual book would make a great gift for yourself or to give away to someone who could use a lift. Anywho, today let's talk about the gifts of imperfection, cultivating gratitude and joy. So my lovelies, we are here with the fourth of the 10 guideposts. Have you noticed how they overlay and interconnect with each other? They're not individual threads, but more like a tightly woven fabric when they all come together. Let's get on with it. Guidepost number 4, cultivating gratitude and joy, letting go of scarcity and fear of the dark. Brené starts this chapter by calling our attention back to how certain research concepts emerged into pairings, like we found love and belonging did earlier in the book. She says, one of the most profound changes in my life happened when I got my head around the relationship between gratitude and joy. On the surface, we can all see how joyful people were also grateful, and why wouldn't they be? They were so fortunate to have joy in their lives. But she said after collating her data around gratitude and joy, 3 powerful patterns emerged. Without exception, every person I interviewed who described living a joyful life or who described themselves as joyful actively practiced gratitude and attributed their joyfulness to their gratitude practice. Both joy and gratitude were described as spiritual practices that were bound to a belief in human interconnectedness and a power greater than us. People were quick to point out the differences between happiness and joy as the difference between a human emotion that's connected to circumstances and a spiritual way of emerging with the world that's connected to practicing gratitude. For many people, gratitude can be a way of thinking, but having an attitude of gratitude may not always transfer into a behaviour. How many of us subscribe to the belief that smoking is harmful, not only to ourselves, but to the others' health around us? And yet, many who say they agree still smoke. That knowledge has not transferred to the aligned behaviour. Think of all the things that you say to yourself about eating, drinking and moving your body. I know intellectually that I should move my body, but these feet have not hit the pavement in years. The same can be said for gratitude, except in this case, I do practice it. I know it's good for me, and I do it all the time. There are loads of ways to practice gratitude, like journaling, meditating, praying, creating, or stopping randomly to say out loud, I'm grateful for something. So, if that's gratitude, what's joy? Brené points out that it's one of those times when we confuse happiness for joy. Being grateful and joyful doesn't mean that I'm happy all of the time. The research shows that happiness is tied to circumstance and joyfulness is tied to spirit and gratitude. Now, I'd wager everyone has said, I'll be happy when, either at some point or maybe even on repeat. And it's always centered around an external experience, event, or situation. Which is why it's so irrational to think that we could be happy all the time. Because situations change all the time. Whereas joy is tethered to our hearts by spirit and gratitude. And there is always something to be grateful for, even in the darkest of moments. Brené points out that we need to cultivate the spiritual practices that lead to joyfulness, especially gratitude. She says of herself, I'd like to experience more happiness, but I want to live from a place of gratitude and joy. And to do that, we must all take a good look at what gets in the way of us meeting that intention. One of the things we do is overlook the simple moments of joy because we're too focused on searching for the big moments. Another is that we're too fearful of the darkness, so we won't allow ourselves to enjoy the lightness. Joy and gratitude can be very vulnerable and intense experiences. Collectively, our tolerance for vulnerability can be anxious and fearful, and this can manifest as scarcity. We think to ourselves, I'm not going to allow myself to feel this joy because I know it won't last. Acknowledging how grateful I am is an invitation for disaster. I'd rather not be joyful than to have to wait for the other shoe to drop. Now, unlike Brené, I'm not prone to worry and anxiety, and I've always felt that I embraced joy and gratitude. But she says of herself that her constant feelings of too good to be true were totally related to fear, scarcity, and vulnerability. And it wasn't until I read her example of standing over her sleeping daughter that I was reminded of my own anxious moments with my children. That first night when they slept all the way through as babies. Waking up in the morning of my own volition and being so joyful that I'd gotten a decent block of much needed sleep. And then thinking, oh my God, are they still alive? And creeping toward their bedroom, too scared to open the door for the fear of what I might find. Now, I'm so grateful to say I only ever found a healthy sleeping baby. But the fear of all the what ifs were very real, if somewhat irrational. She sums this up by saying, the dark does not destroy the light, it defines it. It's our fear of the dark that casts our joy into the shadows. The next section of the book is about scarcity, and what I found really interesting is that in both the 2010 and the 2020 versions, both commence with the statement, these are anxious and fearful times, both of which breed scarcity. The books were released 10 years apart, but the statement is still relevant, which actually gave me a sense of reassurance that this too shall pass. But during this current episode of uncertainty, we have all felt the fear of losing what we love most. People, freedom, and for some it was toilet paper. We all hate that there are no guarantees of what will happen and when it might end. Many believe that if they don't feel gratitude or joy, they will somehow make it hurt less or they'll suffer less. They're wrong. There is one guarantee. If we're not practicing gratitude and allowing ourselves to know joy, we're missing out on the two things that will actually sustain us during the inevitable hard times. How many of us wake up and our first thought is, oh, I didn't get enough sleep? And so begins the list of what we don't have enough of. Money, beauty, good fortune, work or holidays. Lynn Twist, author of The Soul of Money, says, before we even sit up in bed, before our feet touch the floor, we're already inadequate, already behind, already losing, and already lacking something. Addressing this scarcity mentality is not about searching for abundance, despite what the volumes of marketing messages chasing our attention all tell us. Lynn proposes rather choosing a mindset of self-sufficiency. As in any situation or experience, we have the choice of how we will respond. Lynn goes further to suggest that when we let go of scarcity, we can embrace sufficiency. The notion that there is enough and that we too are enough. We can bring this choice to the fore with consciousness. And for that, we can be grateful. We also don't need to chase the extraordinary to experience joy. It's all around us in the ordinary, everyday moments. Brené closes this chapter sharing that she learned the most about the value of ordinary from interviewing men and women who have experienced tremendous loss, such as the loss of a child, violence, genocide, and trauma. The memories they held most sacred were the ordinary, everyday moments. I know this to be true for me. My dad gave the best hugs, and I am so grateful to know that everyday experience. And it brings me so much joy to remember them. I wonder what you can be grateful for in the everyday, even if it's just a memory now. Let's take a look at this guidepost Digging Deep section, where D is for getting deliberate in your thoughts and behaviours through prayer, meditation, or simply setting your intentions. And I is for getting inspired to make new or different choices. And G is for getting going, taking action. While also remembering that digging deep isn't pushing through in the old way. It's about finding a more healing way with good grace, intention and thoughtfulness. So Brené says her D for when she's fearful and scarcity is there. She calls forward joy and sufficiency by acknowledging the fear and then transforming it into gratitude. She says out loud, I'm feeling vulnerable. That's okay. I'm so grateful for, and she fills in a blank. Her I is to get inspired by daily doses of joy that happen in those ordinary moments, like walking her kids home from school, jumping on the trampoline and sharing family meals. And her G is taking turns being thankful during grace through to more creative projects like creating a jar to keep gratitude notes in. Now, as I've been saying since we started looking in this book, when we begin to make changes in ourselves, the people around us can feel discomfort because it's calling them to question themselves and how they validate that. And sometimes that can be a harsh lash out. When that happens, you'll need to talk to somebody about it. And it's really important to be selective with who you share your story with. So I just want to keep reminding you that I created a printable A4 handout with 8 tips to help with the selection of someone safe to share your story with. If you'd like a copy to act as a checklist to help you steer clear of the wrong kind of people, or even more lovely to help you be the right kind of person for someone else, click on the 8 story sharing tips link in the post. Next week, we're going to get into guidepost number 5, cultivating intuition and trusting faith, letting go of the need for certainty. This may not be what you're expecting it to be, but as always, if your now is not the picture that you've painted for yourself and you'd like any help on this discovery path, or maybe something completely different that you intuitively know or feel isn't letting your true colours shine through, then please do get in touch with me. You can do it really easily. Just leave me a comment, send me a private message, drop me an email, or pop over to my Calendly online diary using the link I've provided, and we can set up an obligation-free curiosity call and see if we're a good fit for each other. Much love. Until next time.